Hello everyone, I'm Blackjack Gabbiani. With everyone thinking about Sinnoh right now, I thought I would add to the pile with a video discussing, in depth, some of my thoughts on the region. And by region, I of course mean characters, and by characters, I mean Cyrus. Because who else would I be talking about? Well, Mitsumi maybe, but she's not in the games. If you've known me for any length of time, you know how much I like Cyrus. I find him incredibly compelling, disturbingly relatable, and just the right mix of sympathetic and punchable. And don't get me wrong, I would totally punch this man. He really deserves it, let's be honest with ourselves. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's a limitation of linear time, isn't it? First off, who the heck is Cyrus? I mean, I'm going to assume that like 99% of you know who he is, but if you somehow got recommended this video despite not being able to pick Pikachu out of a lineup, or if for some reason you skipped Generation 4 or whatever, or you only know him from the show and wonder how anybody could possibly like that guy, well, if you're the last one, there's a reason that Anime Cyrus isn't in my thumbnail, because he was an absolute travesty. Anyway, Cyrus is the primary villain of the Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum games, and the leader of an organization called Team Galactic. The members all kind of dress like they're in either a 1950s B-movie about space aliens or a 1980s new wave music video aping those sort of aesthetics, and everyone is kind of weird and wacky and not taken very seriously by the populace. Cyrus, on the other hand, is dire, serious, and speaks grandly about the state of the world. After dealing with galactic grunts who get a verbal beatdown from the regional professor, or who go on about trying to steal honey, or even dealing with the quirky Commander Mars, you meet Cyrus, and the first thing he says to you, in Diamond and Pearl anyway, is about the state of the world. More on the script later, just getting the basics out of the way. At that point, you don't know who he is. He's some schlub who randomly comes up to you in a cave. But when he's revealed as the galactic boss, his encounter makes more sense. What do they want? Well, you ask the different commanders and they'll probably give you different answers. But what Cyrus wants is no less than the complete rewriting of the universe itself, to free it from strife and suffering, by which he means emotion. If we can't feel emotions, we have no reason to cause suffering. We have no reason to be greedy. We can't be hurt by loss or betrayal, and indeed betrayal won't exist either. All of this sounds like pretty standard God complex villain stuff, right? Some sort of gloating egomaniac trying to declare himself a god for his own gain, yeah? Except Cyrus truly believes that what he's saying must be the truth, and that it has to be done to save the world from itself. It isn't about him in his mind. He's just the only one willing to do it. Now, he's wrong, of course. It very much is about him and his view of the world. But even then, this isn't a power trip or egomania. He really thinks that he's the hero, and that you, the player character, possibly even the player yourself, yes, you, are trying to stand in the way of saving the world. To him, you're the villain, in a way that really hadn't been done in this series before. I mean, sure, you could say that all the villains see themselves in the hero as the hero and you as the villain. Well, okay, not Gitsis, who relishes his role as villain and positively delights in it, but he's the villain that even the other villains despise, so we're not talking about him. You could say all that, but it's not nearly in the same way. Even since then, the only ones who really echo Cyrus's sentiment of why must you stand in the way of world salvation are Lysandre, who's basically discounts Cyrus anyway, and Rose, whose ambition is limited to a single region, but the threat he intends to face is more concrete and physical than the other two, even if he's off by 1,000 years. And you know what? Let's hear about the man in his own words, or I guess the words of the English translator, who admitted he didn't understand Cyrus much at all, which is funny because he did a great job of getting the ideas across for a character he supposedly didn't understand. And really, the most notable character change in translation is the use of the word deity instead of God, even though those mean the exact same thing. But he also admitted he didn't understand when Nintendo had these random standards either. Anyway, we've reached the meaty bits. Script analysis. Because this is the kind of stuff you want to read for school. Or I would have. let's look at Diamond and Pearl first. The first time you encounter Cyrus is in Mount Coronet, and he just comes up to you and starts talking. As I said, you have no idea who this man is, or why he's suddenly talking to you about the world, but what he says is quite an introduction. According to one theory, Mount Coronet is where the Sinnoh region began. In a newly created world, a world where only time flowed and space expanded. There should have been no strife, but what became of that world? Because the human spirit is weak and incomplete, strife is spread. This world is being ruined by it. I find the state of things to be deplorable. Now, when I first played, I knew he was when I saw him, and I was not prepared for a battle with the bad guy. But he doesn't battle you. He just talks. And when he walked off, I was left there wanting to talk more. I wanted to follow him and ask him about what he had just told me. There was an odd sense of peace to what he said, this sort of dreamlike quality to it that I found fascinating. The next time you meet him is in the ancient Celestic town, where a galactic bomb nearly destroyed, well, the town, but focused on a mural of legendary Pokemon. Cyrus shows up and tells you, there appears to have been an insignificant struggle here. Yes, everyone should step back and view things from a bigger perspective. Yes, a bigger perspective, one that is on a universal scale. My name is Cyrus. I seek the power to create a new world, a world without strife. However, that power seems to be unavailable here. We've met before, yes? It was at Mount Coronet. If you discover any power derived from the legends of Sinnoh, inform me, for that power is what I need to create my new world. Finally, we get an introduction, and we delve even further into this guy's head. Almost destroying a town, an insignificant struggle? On a universal scale, everything limited to a single planet is insignificant, isn't it? Some things stand out here. One, he flat out tells you that he intends to create a new world. His commanders discussed this as well, but later expressed the idea, that they, or at least Saturn, didn't know what he was really after. I suppose when someone tells you they're going to make a new world, you're just going to assume they mean figuratively. This is what happened in the Diamond and Pearl Adventure manga, and honestly, just be grateful that my volumes of that are packed, because otherwise, we'd be here all day as I poured over all of the 6 volumes that he's in. Anyway, he also essentially asks you to join him, even knowing that you just put a stop to the bomb and everything. And he remembers you, even though he only met you once for about a minute, and probably approaches dozens of people a day in the same manner. I just can't get over how he flat out tells you what his goal is, and everything hinges on people not taking it literally. But I suppose that's human nature, isn't it? After that, the next time you see him is once you storm the galactic base and encounter him in his office. First he says something kind of odd. I see. You must be the trainer I've been hearing about. The foolhardy one that's trying to stand up to Team Galactic. Although I'd hardly expected to see that the trainer is a mere child. I'd heard that our commanders had a rough time with you. And the reason I find this an odd thing for him to say is that he was a child prodigy himself. Maybe not in battling, but he's so smart that people in his hometown still talk about how gosh down smart he was years after he's implied to have left. We know Cyrus was fairly young when he started. He's only 27 during the offense of the games. We actually don't find that out until Platinum, but a Galactic mentions not having had a raise for 5 years. So the team was running when he was at least 22. If he founded it or not remains to be seen, but he's likely been in charge of things for quite some time. So for him to call you, or anyone, a mere child is a bit odd, don't you think? I mean, like I said, in Diamond and Pearl, we don't know his age. I saw people guessing he was as old as 60. We don't go to his hometown in either game until after he's already left the plot. So all this is basically hindsight. But when you do have that information, that line of his becomes very strange indeed. Except that Cyrus has always been exceptional. He doesn't consider anybody else to be on his level because no one he ever has been. Not when he was a kid, and certainly not now. And I know this seems like a lot to read into 2 words, but It's a feeling I can understand. And I know that sounds incredibly full of myself, but I'll get into the more personal connections in a bit. And then he hits you with the big stuff. I know why you're here. I can sense it in you. It's about Yuxi, Mesprit, and Azelf, correct? You want to save them. I no longer have any need for them. I'm finished with them. If your heart aches to save them, go right ahead. I could care less. It will save me the trouble of disposing them. But I must say, you are a remarkable specimen. These Pokemon have nothing to do with you, do they not? But still you came here to rescue them out of pity? Such pitifully useless emotions. It's illogical and irrational. Pity and compassion are products of the weak and lacking human heart. You're compelled to come here by vacuous sentimentality. I will make you regret paying heed to your heart! There's a lot to take apart here. A lot. So whatever he's been up to with the lake spirits, he doesn't care what happens to them afterwards, and then both praises and punishes you for your determination. So, this is the first time he's really gotten into talking about emotions so directly. Before, he came off as sort of aloof and above it all, but now that we see he paradoxically despises emotions. Tying this in with what he said earlier about strife, we get a clearer picture of what he's going for. And yet, as much as he contemns emotions, he's also very clearly acting out of anger, even disgust. Which is kind of pitiable itself, you know? That sort of disconnect from your own motivation, your own driving force. And as we come to learn, he's in pretty big denial about himself and what he's capable of. After all, why get rid of strife unless compassion is one of your driving factors? He's contradicting himself, but of course he would never say so. To him, it would simply be, well, logical and rational. Which to a degree it is. It's perfectly logical and rational, though, to be compassionate. Those aren't zero-sum concepts. Both of those can exist entirely alongside each other. To deny that is what's illogical and irrational, and he doesn't conceive of that as being the case. I think after you fight him, he muses about it, back to his air of cool detachment after that strange outburst. I see. You are indeed strong. And the basis of your power is your compassion towards Pokemon. How wasteful. Such emotions are but mere illusions. And like all illusions, they fade over time until death banishes them forever. That is why I have abandoned all emotions as useless sentimentality. But that doesn't matter. I doubt you will ever understand my position. That said, I recognize that you are strong and courageous to come alone. This is your reward. He's not disappointed that he lost, which isn't all that odd overall, but he's disappointed that your power comes from your compassion. He sees it as a waste and baseless, even though he acknowledges the reality of your strength. It's almost confusing to him to see this play out in front of him. And bear in mind, he wouldn't even know any of this if he hadn't gotten angry at you and challenged you in the first place. It's all because of his own outburst, his own emotions that we saw that he's saying any of this at all, and yet he goes and tells you that he doesn't have emotions at all. Which is, of course, absolute bull. Not only is that just part of being human, he just demonstrated them without a doubt. Heck, he's doing it right now, demonstrating his disappointment in you. Let's look at the wording here. Like all emotions, they fade over time until death banishes them forever. I know a theory at the time because of this line was that his parents had died when he was a kid and he distanced himself from emotions so as not to be consumed by grief. But we learned in Platinum that this wasn't the case. I mean, we don't actually know where his parents are, but they didn't die when he was a kid anyway. So why does he say it like this? Is it just the temporary nature of life, of existence at all? The transient nature of the world itself, even billions of years being an insignificant struggle in the cosmic scale? Heck, even the universe itself is finite, and entropy is a scary thing. Of course, we're not going to understand his position if he gives up explaining it to us. He asked us earlier to help him out, to give him any information we find that'll aid his quest, and now he's given up on us entirely? It isn't as though we hadn't been fighting his forces before Celestic either, so why now? Because we came all this way? Had we crossed an arbitrary line known only to him by entering his base, by defeating him? It's impossible to know. And yet, he even rewards you for taking a stand. After lecturing you on your emotions being a flaw, he gives you the freaking Master Ball. You know, the strongest item in the game, possibly one of the most powerful things you could obtain in the entire franchise. And why? The Master Ball is the ultimate Pokeball. It will unfailingly catch any Pokemon in the wild, but it is not anything that I require. Not anything that he requires. And this information as to why is a little murky unless you investigate his room after this. On his laptop, which isn't on his desk but on the table against the wall, he has an entry about Pokeballs lessening the power of what they catch, which I assume is a bit of hand-waving on the part of the developers as to why when you inevitably catch these gods, you won't have their god powers, which will come to be very confusing once the Rainbow Rocket story rolls around and we see that he has both Dialga and Palkia in balls. But more about that in due time, whenever I make that video. Yes, there's more. For now, he expounds on some more things. Unlike you trainers, I did not make Pokemon my friends or partners. Unlike other Team Galactic members, I don't use Pokemon as tools. Instead, I make the power of Pokemon my own. If you wish to save the Pokemon from the lakes, take the warp panel ahead. I'm off to Mount Coronet. That's correct, Mount Coronet, where you and I first met. I will ascend the mountain up to its peak and put an end to everything. Now I will bring about a new beginning for everything. So, not only does he make a very bold claim that's never expanded on, except maybe in Ultra Sun and Moon, but again, more on that in a future video, he also flat out gives you everything you need to know to bring him the heck down. Why would he do that? And honestly, I'm not sure. There's a bit of an element in later games that make me wonder if he may have wanted to be stopped on some level. But it isn't overt like with Lysandre or anything, and what he says when you show up on the mountain kind of brushes that away. Not negates it, but shows that it isn't at the forefront in his mind. If anything, it may be subconscious, if that's even what he's saying at all. But he also tells you something fun that people, I think, look too much into. People have analyzed the existence of his Crobat, a friendship evolution, for ages, and wonder, well, if he doesn't make Pokemon his friends or partners, how could that happen? Did he steal it? And honestly, I think that's a little... Yeah, I know. I'm saying that, and I'm how far into this video. And overlooking the obvious. Two obvious things. One, the fact that he very clearly has emotions. And two, that he evolved his Crobat the same way you, yes you, the player do. He walks everywhere, and his office is about a block from both the department store and the massage parlor. He's playing it the same way you play the game. He does what's necessary to achieve what he wants in the same manner as someone playing a video game, and that's honestly pretty funny to me. And put an end to everything. No, I will bring about a new beginning for everything. God, what a line. Of course, again, he's being very upfront with you about his plans. He's explained everything to you. And of course he sees symbolism in you having met at the mountain, because he's just that kind of guy. At this point, he seems to view things almost fatalistically. Like, because you met him in that sacred mountain, of course you're going to be the one to try to stop him. It has to be that way, right? Either you join him or you oppose him, but you're special because he met you there. Which, of course, falls apart in Platinum because you meet him much earlier there, but we're not there yet, and neither were the writers. So you free the lake spirits, head to the summit, and there's Cyrus again, enacting his plan just as he said. You fight past his commanders. Why did he leave Saturn behind? The game never says. Does Saturn's doubts get the best of him? Was Cyrus punishing him for interfering with you? I guess we don't know. But... long video. You fight past Mars and Jupiter, and the summoning begins. His dialogue changes depending on version, and I played Pearl, so I'm going to go with those lines. Now all will end, and everything will begin. With this red chain, I will pry open the portal to another dimension. I command that you unleash all your power for me. Palkia, the mythical Pokemon and the master of space and dimensions. So bring about the destruction of all things. With everything gone, there will be no fighting and no strife. Feel the dimensions distorting. Only I can stop it. This is the mythical Pokemon that created Sinnoh. Palkia, the ancient deity of space and dimensions! This world cannot be molded into the ultimate world I seek. It's far easier to create an entirely new world than to change this one. A new world in which I am the ruler of all things. I shall become a deity! So, yep, finally you get the full extent of his plan. Not only to start everything over, but to be a god over all of it. Who else to do so, right? Who else could do so but the one who had the brains and the will to solve these problems? Something here stands out to me more than anything else, though. And that's it's far easier to create an entirely new world than to change this one. That seems to contradict the line that the world can't be turned into his perfect world, like he said in the line just before it, doesn't it? Either it can't be changed, or it's just far easier to do things this way. Which is it? And unfortunately, none of the games really answer this. I really wish they did, because either way would be a fascinating thing to explore. It does make me think he explored other options, though, which is interesting to think of itself. I wonder what else he planned. To rule over a universe to make it peaceful. To build a universe to ensure peace over the bones of the old one. And honestly, that brings up a massive philosophical question. Destroying a universe is an unspeakably violent act with an immeasurable death toll to it. But to ensure that all of that creation will be free of violence for all of time, well, all of new time, is it worth it? It's a theological question as well, because religions tend to excuse the violent actions of their gods all the time out of the belief that it's justified for a greater good. But is it really? I suppose that depends on the viewer, on their ideas of not only divine actions, but also the concept of justice at all. And that's a pretty hefty thing to put in a game for middle schoolers. And he continues, "Oh, Palkia, this is fantastic, beautiful. It's the creating of a new galaxy. My new world! What?" And that's when he's interrupted by Mesprit and the others, the same spirits that he himself permitted you to set free. But also, if you see this part written out, there's a lot of exclamation points. Basically, everything he said for a bit now is ended in them. Kind of funny when you remember he insists that he's emotionless. When you think of it, Mesprit's involvement is his own fault for letting you free the lake spirits. His lingering sentimentality or whatever reason he had, that wasn't even your doing, but his. The red chain. It crumbled away to nothing. But why? Why would Mesprit, the Pokemon of Lake Verity, appear by your side? Never mind that. It's all destroyed. My galaxy is gone. I won't allow this. I'll capture those three again and craft another red chain. But before I even think about that, I'm going to completely crush you! Of course, acting on anger again. He seems to default to anger, and it's interesting to see, again, with the claim that he doesn't feel anything. He should know that this is his own fault, and you were just a conduit for it, and it would have happened if you were there or not. Remember, you haven't done anything after the summoning started. You just sat there and watched it happen. He let you free the spirits, and he's paying the price for his own foolish behavior. He's the architect of his own downfall, just as it was always meant to be, but he takes it out on you. How could he be wrong? He's never wrong. It's the egotism that comes in second nature when you've always been the smartest one in the room. He couldn't possibly be wrong, so it must be your fault. You were the one he met in the sacred mountain. You were the one who dared to stand against him. You were the one he had faith in, and you let him down. Because he knows it's his fault, really. Deep down, he knows he failed. But he has to blame someone else. He's the one who would be a god. So if he's fallible, then it means his creation would be doomed to failure anyway. And yet he vows to keep going, and if you lose to him, he does keep going. And I want to talk about that because it's really kind of darkly hilarious. He makes the same mistake again, even without your involvement. He forges another chain, which almost certainly means he has to recapture the lake spirits, and even without you there, he lets them go again, so they come back and mess up his plans again. The same thing keeps happening as many times as you lose to him. At this point, his failure is entirely his fault, and he continues to blame you for it because he has the coping skills of a small child. But finally you defeat him. I won't accept this. The power spoken of mythology. I didn't just make it obey me. I made it my own. He says upon defeat, and I'm not sure if he's rationalizing it, relishing his brief success no matter how fleeting it was, or just talking himself up to convince himself that he isn't a complete failure. And then he asks something very curious. What is truly the ultimate to you? What do you consider perfection? The most important thing. What shines the brightest? Telling you is meaningless. But I will not give up. I will become a deity one day, and I will make the ultimate mine. Gosh. What is the ultimate to me? What is the most important thing? And what would his answer be? Justice? Peace? I feel like these may be impossible to answer for myself or for him. They make you think, even if you can't summon any answer. I've been pondering my own answers ever since this point, and I don't think I'm really any closer to figuring it out. After he left, I honestly felt kind of empty. I wanted to beat him, and I even felt the need to do so. But I wanted to follow him after that. Let Barry or whoever get Palkia, which I caught in a quick ball, by the way. I wanted to ask Cyrus what he meant. I wanted to know where he was going. I wanted to talk to him just once more. I kind of wanted to know if he was going to be okay. The game just wasn't the same without him, but moreover, I felt different in his absence. I felt different in his absence. And that's when you know a character is important to you. Hearing about him in Sunnysure was nice, even though it was just a tidbit. He was an excellent student, people said, and considering that he probably left that place in the dust ages ago, just how good of a student was he that people continued to talk about him for that long? Anyway, that was the last we really hear about him in Diamond and Pearl, unless he wanted to go and talk to Saturn hanging around the base, and he just says he didn't know what Cyrus was after, and he just let himself be taken in by Cyrus's confidence and his way of speaking, which, again, I point out to you that Saturn talked to you about what Cyrus's plan was before Spear Pillar, but also, again, I suppose that when someone tells you they're going to make a new world, your impulse is to assume they mean metaphorically. So when Platinum promised to expand the galactic plot and add a new commander and everything, I was excited, but full confession time here. I ended up selling my copy of Platinum because I didn't like some of the changes they had made, specifically to Cyrus's character. However, now that I've had some distance and some time to read over and think about his dialogue, was that much really changed? They added a lot, mixed some things around, but what really changed? I'm not going to go over the full script because, god dang, just how long this video is already, and a lot of what he says is recycled from Diamond and Pearl anyway. We meet him earlier in Platinum, in fact at the very beginning of the game, but he's just pontificating to Mesprit there. Next we see him in Eterna at the statue, and he mentions the truth of the myth needs investigation, which isn't worth a full dissection, but it's curious that this indicates he hasn't fully gotten things figured out just yet. Then Mount Coronet, he says almost the same thing as your initial Diamond and Pearl meeting. It's reworded slightly, and honestly, State of Affairs just sounds clunkier than State of Things. I don't like it. Moving on to Celestic. He shows up in the cave with the ancient art, and changes here are really weird, but quite interesting. My name is Cyrus. I want to put an end to pointless strife and hostility. The power to create the ideal world. Thus, I want you to answer. The world today can't change because the 3 Pokemon keep it in balance. Is that what you're saying? He's talking to Cyrus's grandmother here, the elder of the town. Her attitude is curious because she seems to deny that there's any problem with the world, while he thinks there's nothing but problems. She kind of reflects an attitude I see not only elsewhere in the games, but also from Masuda himself, where he's been cited as saying basically if there were any real problems in the Pokemon world, they're in the past. And it's real weird because anybody can see that not only are the characters who say that in the wrong, so's the director of the game. If there weren't big problems in the world, we wouldn't have characters like Cyrus, or most of the other bad guys as well. We wouldn't even have characters like Surge way back in 1st Gen. You know, the war veteran. But the 3 Pokemon. There's a mystery to that because, as it turns out, Cyrus and Cynthia have different interpretations of the mural, which trio it means. It's very odd, because they both seem to be both right and wrong with it. We know it's the lake spirits because the red chain works, and we know it's the 3 dragons because the mystery stage event works. Both of them are absolutely correct in their interpretations, even though they conflict. It's very interesting, and I rather like the implications of this. Plead ignorance, will you? What a pointless attitude. You fail to appreciate that the world is incomplete. I will change the world. As the first step, I will destroy this cave painting that you've protected all these years. A new legend of a new world will take its place. Am I wrong? If you feel that way, challenge me. So not only is he threatening us, he's goading us into attacking. But what's funny here is the outcome. If you lose to him, it just happens again. If you win, he just leaves. He doesn't destroy the mural either way, despite having threatened to. Is he trolling us? Was this all a test to see if we would stand up for what we believe in? I would say, of course we do, but we're also the only ones who do. Even Grandma, the person tasked with protecting not only the mural but the entire town, doesn't make a move to stop him. And that kind of proves him right, doesn't it? The people in power doing nothing to protect anybody? It's really weird, especially since Masuda sides with Granny over here. So Cyrus trolls you, provokes you, makes you take the initiative, and of course tells you more of his plan like he did in the first game. What's especially funny is that you can decline to engage him, and he flat out calls you a coward for it. And he still doesn't blow up the mural. He backs down no matter what happens. Frickin' heck, he is trolling us. It's a test to him, with a result only he knows. He says he's gonna blow it up to get a reaction out of you, but any reaction will stop him. What a weirdo. Either way, before he leaves, he says, "Remarkable, but Elder, your attitude told me what I needed to know. If the beings of time and space are brought together, they can't be stopped." The beings of time and space, well, we know from the prior games that's exactly what those are. But that's not a trio, wait a minute. He also doesn't tell us to bring him any information we find like he did before. From there, it's just a bit until we see him again. In fact, next time we see him, we can't even interact with him just yet. I had to sneak into the galactic base and see him giving a speech. And it's wild. Fellow members of Team Galactic, hear me. My name as I appear to you today is Cyrus. This world of ours is a crude one. In a word, it is incomplete. It has been and always will be a struggle to survive in this world. We humans and Pokemon are likewise incomplete. Because we are also lacking. We fight. We maim. It is ugly. I hate the incompleteness. That we are all incomplete. I hate it with all my entire body and being. The world should be complete. The world must change. Then who will change it? Me, Cyrus, and Team Galactic. Yes, all of you. Together we pored over myths and exposed their secrets. Together we captured legendary Pokémon. And now, Team Galactic has obtained the energy to change the world. The power of dreams is within our grasp. Understand it, fellow members. My long-held dream world is on the verge of becoming reality. All those headed to Mount Coronet, and those who remain here, though our missions may differ, our hearts beat as one. Let there be glory for Team Galactic. A lot of things to take apart here. Again. First off, and probably the most overtly notable thing, he talks about hating things. He hates the incompleteness. He hates it with basically all that he is. And he's confessing this in front of everyone. Cyrus talking about his emotions in a way that isn't denying they exist. So from that alone, you know something is up. The moment you hear that, you're on alert, because going into this, you already know there's more to this. Though, to be fair, the real importance of the speech isn't going to be known until you confront him in his office again. So I'll get to that now. You head there and he says something... something that's on its surface is what made me stop playing Platinum. So you've come. You've heard my speech, I take it. Snicker. A big lie, of course. It's true, insofar as my intention is to create an entirely new world. But that world isn't for the likes of Team Galactic. I seek an entirely new world solely for myself. If not, it can never be the complete and perfect world. You've seen my minions of Team Galactic. You yourself know that they are uniformly useless and incomplete. Solely for himself? Does he not give a damn about anybody but himself? Then what's the point of any of it if he's just gonna ultimecia himself to be the only being in existence? Nothing makes sense. Nothing from the previous game and nothing from this thing make any godforsaken sense anymore. In this line, solely for myself. Good God, that line is to blame for the absolute debacle that was Anime Cyrus. I'm sure of it. We're going so well, and then he hits you with this travesty, and it's infuriating. I ended up selling my Platinum copy because of how stupid this revelation was. But, I mean, I'm here talking to you now about what a great character he is. So what changed my mind back to my original position? What made me like him again and realize I had been right about him all along? To do that, you have to look at the big picture. The full extent of it can't be seen until later, but for now, let's work with what we have. Think back to Celestic Town. He told you he was going to destroy the mural, and then did nothing of the sort. He was testing your mettle to see your reaction. He does this sort of thing in Diamond and Pearl Adventure as well, doing things to test others and see their reaction. When he forces Mitsumi to rejoin him, it isn't even about her. It's about Haruta. He sees Haruta as a pure being who doesn't possess hatred, so he does everything in his power to force Haruta to demonstrate hatred. When everything comes to a head, he shows his hand saying, "You must hate me more than ever." Says it with a goddamn smile on his face. But Haruta doesn't hate him. Haruta is crying in shock, feeling only pity. Cyrus had done all that, broken Mitsumi and Jun both, almost killed Mitsumi in the process, and yet it still couldn't confirm his worldview. That somebody like that could exist would mean there was hope for the world after all, and he couldn't tolerate it. He has to destroy it because he has to be right. He can't have wasted everything. To a much lesser extent, he's doing it here too. He hasn't tried to break your friends, but he's manipulating your emotions. What's funny is that he could have told the unvarnished truth, and it would have still been enough. He does see his followers as utterly disposable and plans to wipe them all out. That much is still true and still positively unthinkable. Sure, his followers are idiots, but they don't deserve that. Nobody does. The absolute truth would have been more than enough to achieve the anger he desires from you, to force a compassionate person to hate. If anything would do that, that would be it. And yet, he still feels the need to lie, even though we don't yet know he is lying. We won't find that out for a little while yet. Though. His lie here is almost certainly responsible for Anime Cyrus, and I hate it. I hate it with all my body and being. What were we talking about? Anyway. Then he repeats his Diamond and Pearl lines about sensing you're there for the lake spirits, and that letting you free them will save him the trouble of disposing them, and lecturing you on how wasteful and irrational compassion is, despite calling you remarkable for it, all of that, and then challenges you again for your vacuous sentimentality. And the only thing that really changes here is that instead of reminding you the coronet is where you first met, he tells you he's going there. He says it's where destiny awaits me. At this point, you know everything about his plan, or you think you do, because there's still a twist coming. You go up there, find him summoning both the gods this time, with one genuine chain and one replica that seems to work just fine, which is curious on its own. Is that how he managed to make more if you lose to him in the prior game? He made backup files that could reproduce as many as he needed? I kind of wish the game let us explore that kind of timeline, but can't have everything. Now Cyrus will soon learn. I've waited for so long for this moment, Dialga and Palkia. Shaping this world is a double spiral of time and space. Yes, the very things that you have the ability to control. You will do my bidding. I'll have your abilities as mine. The power I wield, I will create an entirely new world. The incomplete and ugly world we have now can disappear. I'm resetting everything to zero. Nothing can remain. It is all for making the ultimate world. A world of complete perfection. Nothing so vague and incomplete as spirit can remain. Most of it is copied from Diamond and Pearl again. Do you remember how he says that he makes the power of Pokemon his own? Yeah, I will have your abilities as mine, echoes that again, and it almost seems to mean something different this time. When he talks about his own Pokemon, he's not being literal, but here, I can't put my finger on why exactly, but he seems to mean it very literally here. I mean, his plan is to become capital G God, after all, so it stands out from the clearly metaphorical usage earlier. And of course, whoo boy, all the exclamation marks. That's a passionate exhortation from a guy who claims to be emotionless. I swear he's got no sense of internal reflection. Does he expect anybody to believe that he doesn't feel anything? So the lake spirits you freed showed up, but the Pokemon have come to protect Sinnoh. Pathetic and worthless. It takes the three of them, the three lake Pokemon that symbolize spirit, to balance either the Pokemon of time or space. But they can't maintain balance against the two. Not when both Dialga and Palkia are here. Their coming here is in vain. So much meaningless drama. Now, player, you've constantly interfered with my plans, but you will be forgiven. After all, there will remain no spirit for all time when I am done. All spirit will disappear. It will be ripped away. From you! From your Pokemon! From those precious to you! It is time. My dream will be my reality. So the meaning of the mural, or his interpretation of it anyway, is of the three lake spirits around the gods he summoned, which makes sense because the red chain works. Clearly, there's some legitimate connection there. And they're overwhelmed by trying to contend with both of the gods at once, so they can't break the chain like they did last time. We also have a fuller idea here of what he means by spirit. Knowledge, willpower, and of course emotion, but what's so strange here is that he very clearly values knowledge and willpower. He's incredibly intelligent and thinks of himself as superior for it, planning to erase his followers from existence because they're just so goddamn dumb. And he praises you for acting on your willpower. He's obviously very willful himself, or we wouldn't be here. And of course, we know he's also brimming with emotions. He just pretends he isn't. But let's think for a moment. He praises you for your own willpower, and let's look what he says here. All spirit will disappear. It will be ripped away from you, from your Pokemon, from those precious to you. Guys, I think he's planning on sparing us. I mean, kinda. He talked earlier about essentially flat out deleting his own followers, but here you're being purified. Because why do that to someone you're just going to system wipe out of existence? Unless... Were we wrong about his plan again? He said the new world wasn't for the likes of them, but what he had said during his speech wasn't about existing, it was about power. He had promised them that they would all hold dominion over the new world. He pumped it up as a team effort, and promised them essentially a team reward. So seeking the new world solely for himself, gosh, the whole thing gets a lot more complicated in hindsight, doesn't it? Of course, he calls them incomplete because we all are. The entire world is. And by God, or in his case, be God, he's going to complete everything. To be honest, I'm still not sure. Does that mean that only that he plans on keeping them servile and the lie was that they would be in leadership positions? Or does it mean that he plans on cutting the fat entirely and the lie would be that they would exist at all? Because he's just demonstrated that others will in fact exist in his new world. Would it include them at all? Who knows? And if you think he hasn't proven that others will exist yet, we're getting to that. Now, nothing seems to happen. But Cyrus stops, saying, "What is this pressure I feel? Something is enraged." He's mentioned this a few times now, things about sensing what others feel. It's mostly been obvious, like that he can sense that you came to the base to free the lake spirits. But he's able to feel how angry Giratina is before there's any evidence that it's there. Yeah, it could be fancy language, but what would give him that impression before anyone else reacts? I can't help but wonder. Maybe it's just his position on the spear pillar, or that he's the clear target of this wrath, but I've always pondered the possibility that he may be somewhat empathic. And wouldn't that just be the icing on the cake? I can't really prove it, but it comes again in Ultra, so bear that in mind when I make that video. So Giratina shows up and nabs him, dragging him to the Distortion World, and you and Cynthia follow, and when you find him, he brings up that whole double spiral of space and time thing again, asking you if you understand the concept of genes. Side note, when do kids learn about DNA anyway? I don't really remember when I did, but is it reasonable to assume that a 10 or 11-year-old will at least know of the concept? Because if you say yes, he says, "If it's true, you've impressed me." And if you say no, you get, "No, of course you wouldn't." What the heck, Cyrus? I know you've got a superiority complex the size of Coronet itself, but frick's sake, it's not an especially advanced concept. Genes can be considered the blueprints of all life forms. That includes humans and Pokemon alike. Genes are contained in a DNA strand. A DNA strand consists of two chains of opposing characteristic in a spiral. If one of the chains were to be broken, the other could replicate it. One or the other cannot exist without its opposite. Do you understand where I'm going with this? This is a bizarre world. Time doesn't flow. Space isn't stable. Only that shadowy Pokemon lives here. This world is the opposite of our world I wish to change. It is like the two chains composing the strand of DNA. The two worlds must be balancing each other to remain in existence. Without one, the other cannot exist. The shadowy Pokemon must play a role in keeping the worlds in balance. That is why it must have interfered and brought me here. The shadowy Pokemon must have made this bizarre world. That's why trying to change it, to change our world, disturbed it and made it reveal itself. But that is all irrelevant. What matters is defeating that Pokemon and making this world disappear. I won't allow it to interfere with me again. With it gone, neither world will be able to revert to its original state. So he believes that the Distortion World is concurrent to the outside world, and frankly put, we have no reason to believe otherwise. It seems to be a Doyleist way of telling the player about the purpose this world serves, and also kind of to make Cyrus seem smarter for figuring it out within the 5 or so minutes he's been here. I mean, sorta. If time doesn't flow, then how are we having a conversation in linear time? How are our actions connected? How are we able to navigate it all? And if space isn't stable, then how are we maintaining our bodies or keeping aloft on these platforms? Or how come doing the same actions always has the same consequences? Going down a path in the Distortion World will always end with you in the same position, even if you have to cross walls and go up waterfalls to get there. But I think we're just meant to assume that he's correct about everything up to this point, and that Game Freak is just playing fast and loose with the laws of physics to tell a story. Yeah, sometimes overthinking this stuff can give you a headache. And by you, of course, I mean me. So after he brief history of times you for a while, you've solved some puzzles, and next you find he's talking to Cynthia, who asked him something that, I don't know, maybe I took it a little differently than most people. She asked him that if he hates the world so much, why doesn't he go off somewhere alone? Now, I know it's not just me who interprets her words this way, because I've seen at least one fan comic where she's putting it the way I took it, but is she asking why he hasn't killed himself yet? Cynthia, is that what you're doing? Cynthia, you're supposed to be the good guy here. Please don't be a bully. Cynthia, please take the high ground. Cyrus replies with, why should I run and hide from the world and have to wait quietly? My aim is to rid our world of the vague and incomplete thing we call spirit. By freeing ourselves of that, our world can be made complete. That is my justice. No one can interfere! Something interesting here. Free our world. Freeing ourselves. Our world can be made complete. Not her world or even the world, but everything here is in multiples that includes himself and his enemies. And that goes double for the last bit. Our world can be made complete. Of course, it's still his justice, because he's, after all, the only one willing and able to do it. But it's his justice for our world that will make it complete. I won't lose. Not to that shadowy Pokemon. Not in any worthless world! He tells us before battling us again. And here, worthless world. Now, Generations does a better job of depicting Cyrus than the main anime did, but it still utterly botched how he views the Distortion World. In Generations, he saw it as the world he had wanted all along, a world of silent contemplation, but in the games he dismisses it utterly. And once you beat him, oh yeah, things are breaking down. I won't accept this. This can't be. Not after all the sacrifices we've made to get this far. What if my new world, of my new galaxy, was this all a dream to be swept away by your reality? Swept away by your reality. God, that's a neat line. But all the sacrifices we've made. What? Even when he then says my new world and my new galaxy, suddenly he's speaking of his followers as well? Does he secretly appreciate them even though he sees them as disposable? Is he talking about you? It's all very confusing and doesn't really have an answer, I suppose. Remember how I said not long ago that we've been trusting that he's right about the Distortion World and kind of serving as a mouthpiece for Game Freak to tell us about this place? Yeah, that's about to change. Don't think that you can defeat or capture that Pokemon. This bizarre world is none other than that Pokemon itself. Capturing or defeating it will make this world disappear. Very well. Do what you will. Rather than repairing the world, you're going to destroy it for me. Do it. You inherit my legacy. Cyrus, are you back to trolling us? Are you back to telling lies to see what we'll do? Because you're full of it, Cyrus, and you have no scientific backing to your claims here. I mean, less than you already did. And Cynthia reminds you that it's not possible that a Pokemon can make the world disappear, though, if that's the case, then why are we here at all? Surely it is possible, or else Dialga and Palkia wouldn't be such a danger in Cyrus's hands, right? So both of them seem to be making stuff up by this point. Now, you have three options here. 1, you can capture Giratina. 2, you can knock it out. 3, you can just plain run from it, which Cyrus calls, you quelled its rage by refusing to battle it. Kind of reminds me of Illyria and Celestic if you don't fight him. But all of them will have the same end reaction from him. Your doing so means that this irrational world will remain in existence. Does that make it impossible for me to create a new world? Even if I made new red chains, the new world can't be made. Why? What compels you to protect the two worlds? Is spirit a vague and incomplete thing so important to you? I'm not sure why he doesn't hit on the idea of creating 3 chains. It seems only obvious. And I still don't know why he thinks Giratina's existence is somehow tied to the existence of the world itself, because at that point it's no longer the information about the Distortion World that he was giving us earlier. This is just theorizing by this point, isn't it? Or is he grasping at straws trying to control the situation? And he can't fathom why anybody would want to live in a world with spirit. Why anybody would want to feel anything. Why anybody would want compassion or anger or love or hate or anything, and we're about to hit on why. See, Cynthia says something really bizarre. She tells you, the places we're born, the time we spend living, the languages we speak, we're all different, but the presence of Pokemon unites us. We share our lives with our Pokemon, and our happiness grows as we all become greater than we were alone. That is why we can battle and trade with anyone we choose. And what the heck kind of answer is that? Is that what passes for wisdom in Sinnoh? How the hell are we supposed to react to blather like that? Well, Cyrus has an answer to that, and it's to have a frickin' breakdown. Silence! He screams at you, breaking his facade harder than he's ever broken it before. Enough of your blathering! That's how you justify spirit as something worthwhile. It's merely humans hoping, deluding themselves that they are happy and safe. And honestly, the man has a point. Her response was a complete non sequitur to anything he had said, going on about battles and trades and just utterly ignoring everything he had asked. It was honestly pretty selfish of her. Like she had a speech planned and she wasn't going to let silly things like context or talking a desperate and violent man down get in the way of it. He continues, confessing, the emotions roiling inside me. Rage, hatred, frustration. These ugly emotions arise because of my own incomplete spirit. And that right there, not Giratina, not the existence of the Distortion World, not the fragility of the red chain, that is why his plan is doomed to fail. Because even if he succeeds, even if he manages to create a new universe, Cyrus will always fail because he's his own weak link. He's his own downfall. His own inability to cope with his emotions. That's why he can never win. Even a universe created by his hand, full of emotionless drones or Vulcans or whatever he's after, can never be perfect by his own definition because of him. Everything he could ever possibly build in any of the multiverses we've seen will fail because he can't live up to his own demands. And that's just woeful. It's painful to see play out because he continues to have no self-reflection, even in the midst of a meltdown as he is. Enough. We will never see eye to eye. This I promise you. I will break the secrets of the world. With that knowledge, I will create my own complete and perfect world. One day, you will awaken to a world of my creation. A world without spirit. And then he walks off, back in the Distortion World, with a final promise to see you again in that new world. Yeah, once again, I want to follow him, but Cynthia blocks our way. We're shoved up on a floating platform 1 square big, and she's on another one, preventing us from pursuing him. And when we leave and end up back in the outside world, she stands in front of the portal so we can't go back in. And she'll remain there. The game goes out of its way to ensure you can't go after him. Is this a response to people wanting to do so in Diamond and Pearl? Like, was mine a common reaction and they wanted to ensure you couldn't do it? It's honestly sad. You leave him there having a complete mental breakdown all on his own. Nothing is really keeping him there except himself. I know there's this idea that he's trapped there, but even Cynthia just walked right out. There's nothing physically preventing him from doing the same. But mentally, it's a different story. Mentally, it would mean confronting his own failures. And we see what happens to him when he fails. And yet, is it wrong to have hopes for him? In Diamond and Pearl Adventure and Poké Special, he needed to be entirely beaten and then spend time isolated in order to have a change of heart. He needed to be confronted with the utter failure of his plan and then left alone with his thoughts. And in both of those, he came out of it a changed man, seeing maybe not necessarily that he had been wrong, but that there are other ways of doing things, that his obsessive zeal for his own ideas was based on a very narrow view of the world. Since there is sadness, we can feel joy. When there is anger, compassion is born, Cynthia tells you as you leave that world. And while it's trite, and honestly I again question why she says it when she does, because it just comes off in the same non sequitur tone that her previous blather did. Joy doesn't only exist because of sadness. What the crap, Cynthia? Even then, it's still got the kernel of something that Cyrus can probably soon learn. That because we have emotions at all, that we can experience these things, and sometimes you have to take the lumps with the good. But if your life is more lumps than anything else, how are you meant to learn that? What shaped his rigid worldview to begin with? Well, in Platinum, there's still one more thing to learn about Cyrus. Not only was he still such a great student, and people in Sunyshore still talk about him so long after he would have left, but I mean his grandfather. You go to a house on the North Island in the post-game, and there's an old man with a lot of books, and he tells you something really unsettling. Go to Route 228 and find that old man who notices that you have the Sunyshore badge. He tells you, "My grandson grew up in that city by the sea. Worn down by trying to live up to his parents' expectations, he found refuge in tinkering with machines. I wonder even now if I should have taken him in and raised him myself. Though I'm not certain if that would have been a good choice or not. I don't think anyone could say. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said any of this to you." What do you even say to that? What do you say to someone who did nothing to help someone who was falling apart in front of him? No wonder Cyrus viewed compassion as a lie. No wonder he viewed joy as a distraction. I'm going to talk pretty frankly about myself, so I want you to bear with me. When I was young, I was a very unhappy kid. I was smart but isolated. Could never really get many people to like me, so I had my own little world. Didn't help that I was easily frustrated, and this led to a lot of anger issues. When you grow up like that, it's easy to believe that everyone else is just like you. That everyone else has so much anger. I mean, look at the world, right? When people treat you like crap for whatever reason, when the world itself has so much hatred in it, what else could it be? And I think that's what happened to Cyrus. That his anger at the world was something he thought everyone had. And when he tried to rely on someone, his grandfather, and was ignored, it's going to shatter a kid. When you have nowhere to turn except inward, that's really going to be destructive. I had to be the perfect kid, just like Cyrus. I had to be the best student, or else I was seen as an idiot. I had to be on my best behavior, or else I was seen as a monster. Granted, I don't think Cyrus was ever in special ed like I was. God, that would have been even worse for him. Stepping out of line at all, even completely arbitrary lines like "you can't sit up on your knees in your chair" was cause for punishment. And I didn't take it. I refused to settle for anything but justice, so I got punished a lot. Every time I spoke up, I was shouted down. That particular event got me expelled from my school because my resistance to punishment showed that I wasn't going to be broken down. They dragged me to the principal's office, literally screaming what had happened to anyone that would listen. I was 9. Either be perfect or be nothing. That's a hell of a lesson to instill in a kid, especially when the definition of perfect is based on submission and arbitrary lines. So yeah, my formative years were essentially hell. I had a handful of friends, one of whom was in that class with me and knew what it was like. But he lived far away, a few miles, which may as well be on the other side of the planet when all you have is a bicycle and your parents won't let you cross busy streets. So for the most part, I was alone with my thoughts, my frustration, my intense anger, and the crushing pressure of having to be some random ideal, and it was absolute hell. And with Cyrus, there wasn't an escape. His grandfather, for whatever reason, refused help even when he saw this boy was falling apart and his one possible outlet was gone. I don't know if he ever did try to reach out to anybody else before or after, but no help came. He was stuck there under that crushing pressure. I turned to my imagination. Spent years trying to pretend I was a character from a movie. I will not tell you which one. Anything to get out of that situation for a moment. And Cyrus had his machines. Whatever he built, I can see why it would draw him in. Machines wouldn't make demands. They're simple and logical, and if something doesn't work, he can change it. Everything would be straightforward, and he could fix any problems. Everything would make sense. He could make his own perfection, his own ideal world. And what, after all, could be more perfect than a god? I don't think he had that aspiration as a child, though he may have thought of it casually as a power fantasy, and I don't know when he got caught up in the legends of Sinnoh. I hope the remakes cover that sort of thing, because it would be fascinating to know. It's in between somewhere. Between childhood and Galactic, we find out that at least one person cared about Cyrus and saw what was happening to him, but somehow did nothing. His grandfather knew what was going on and still didn't intervene. Probably the one person he could have relied on did nothing. And as we know, good people doing nothing is all it takes for evil to triumph. All it can take for something horrible to take hold. I guess that explains what I'm going for here. Everything I've said boils down in one way or another to I like Cyrus because I can unfortunately relate to him. I suppose in a way that's a very negative thing, but on the other hand, his characters also helped me deal with a lot of what happened to me. I think I'm a better person and a better self because of characters like him. And he's also really helped me to think about the world and how it all fits together. Our roles in the world as individuals, recognizing extremism even on our own sides, knowing what's really best for the world as a whole. It's all very important and told in a way that kids can understand. Or not, because I guess people found him a confusing character. Even the translator, like I said near the beginning, found it hard to imagine why anybody would follow him, which is really kind of funny to me because it was always obvious from my perspective. Anyway, I suppose I just wanted to get this out. I've been sitting on these thoughts for years, and I wanted someone to hear them. We should probably be glad I don't have my Diamond and Pearl Adventure volumes on hand since I'm moving, or else we'd be here all day. I may have to make another video about that. I'm going to make another video about Cyrus's appearance in Ultra and Masters. Really get into how his portrayals have changed in recent years in a way I very much approve of. This video is about why I like him so much, and the games and DPA are the core reason for that. Both of these came later, of course. I want to thank all of you for listening, and hope that you've gained a greater understanding of this character and why he means so much to me. I think we've all felt that kind of despair at points in our lives, and sometimes dealing with it can be overwhelming.
It can dominate us. And I hope that we can all find something brighter, something greater to believe in. We can all make a new world. From this world rather than whole cloth, and it's up to us to do so. Let's how Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl keep going. They got a lot riding on them and a lot to live up to. To conclude, I'd like you all to ponder something. What is truly ultimate to you? What do you consider perfection? The most important thing. What shines the brightest? Tell me what it is. Until next time, I'm Blackjack Gaviani. Thank you for joining me.